Excuse me. First off, there were 200s. Nicely done. I thought it was a tough quiz. Very, very, very good job. We'll go over the quiz in just a moment. But before we do that, while I have these answers up, take a look and see what you think if there are any issues. I purposely did all of the factoring questions. Hey, end the game. I did all of the factoring questions from last night's homework, and then a couple others that are for whatever reason, I thought were important to go over. So are there any questions on numbers 1 through 12 here, the factorings? Anything that you don't see? Anything at all? You checked it over, right? Looking for that greatest common factor? When we say to factor, what is the phrase anti-something that you should think of? Anti-distribute. Very good. It's like playing Jeopardy. It's going backwards. Nicely done. Okay. Now, number 13, I think, is an important question. Not that it's difficult. It's not difficult at all. But a lot of times people see 3x minus 5 squared, and they write 9x squared plus 25. In other words, what people do a lot is they think that this squared here means just square the 3x and square the negative 5. It doesn't. To square something means to multiply it by itself. So I have to do 3x minus 5 times 3x minus 5, which sets up a double distribute, which comes out to 9x squared minus 30x plus 15. That is an extremely common mistake for people to write down 9x squared plus 25. And it would be wrong every single time. So I want to make sure that you don't make that mistake. Number 18, just cross multiply. It's easy. But just in case you, for whatever reason, had a brain cramp and just forgot how to do it, cross multiplying is really easy. And number 19 is to find the slope and the y-intercept. I started wrong. I thought the equal sign was between the 2y and the 5x. On the side, I did it properly. The slope is going to be 5 halves, and the y-intercept is going to be 5. Okay? Questions? Any problems at all? Okay. So that would be step 1 for today. Now, the next thing we're going to do is go over the quiz. I feel, I don't know if liberated is the right word, but I feel like I've finally begun to find the right path, in the sense of when we first, let me see here. When we first began to get the Regents exam materials for this particular course and so on, I felt so lost. I really did. I felt like New York State wasn't helping us at all in getting a feel for what it is that was expected of you. But now, with 5 Regents exams under our belts, plus noticing the similarities between Algebra 2 Trig Regents questions and these Regents questions, I feel like I have, while not a perfect supply of appropriate questions, a much, God bless, better supply of appropriate questions. So most of the rest of the year, these quizzes that we take will all be based on old Regents exam questions. And these are 4 questions that all came off old Regents exams. So obviously, if you didn't do too well, that's not a good sign. But it's a doesn't matter sign, as long as from this point forward, you straighten these things out. If you didn't do well on today's quiz, make sure that you go home tonight and you go over these questions before you begin your homework so that you're thoroughly prepared for tomorrow's quiz. I don't think you're going to find any of them particularly difficult. Okay? I think a lot of it is in details. And good. Okay, so the distance a free-falling object is traveled can be modeled by the equation d equals 1/2 at squared. Then it wants me to solve for, or what is, t in terms of. So that means I have to make it say t equals, and that should be pretty obvious because all 4 choices say t equals. Everybody's heads in the game, right? Yeah. Okay, good. Now, what's the first bad thing that stops this t from being by itself? That's, all right, well, yes, but that's not the first thing I'm going to attack.
That's okay.
Okay? Whenever we try to solve an equation, we reverse the order of operations. Isabella? The 1/2. Yeah, the 1/2 is ugly. I do not like the 1/2. Ugh, on the 1/2. So to get rid of the 1/2, I'm going to multiply by 2. Die, and now I have 2d equals a t squared. But the t is still not by itself. What do I have to do to get t by itself now?
Divide by a.
Divide by a. Very nice. Divide by a. Haha, die. Still not by itself because it says t squared. And what's the opposite of the square of t?
Square root.
Square root. So I square root, and I square root, and I get t equals
That's the number 2.
the square root of 2d over a. Choice 2 is the correct answer. Okay? And again, I don't think this is overly difficult. I think it's a matter of you just have to practice it a little to make it make sense. All right, any questions on number 1? All right, let's now go to number 2. And I expected, we have done a couple of questions like this during the course of the year. And at no point in time have I been confident in the class's ability as a whole to get this question right. And this stopped probably 3 or 4 kids from getting 100 on the quiz. And I think it's in not really understanding what they're asking you to do. So let's go through this step by step. Determine the smallest integer that makes this true. Okay, well, I think everybody in the room knew to start by solving the inequality. So let's do that. This is a same side situation, so altogether I have negative 8x's plus 7 is less than 15. And then I would think everybody knows to do this. And we get negative 8x is less than 8. Then I divide by negative 8, and now we start coming into the problems. The first question is, did you remember when you divide an inequality by a negative, you have to switch the symbol? That's the first potential mistake. So we get x is greater than negative 1. And now I want to go back to what the question says. A lot of people went up here and they wrote this in the answer space. What's the question say?
Determine the smallest integer.
The smallest what?
Integer.
What the heck is an integer?
I don't know.
Well, therein lies the rub. What's an integer? What kind of number?
An odd number.
Could be, doesn't have to be. What? Or negative or 0 whole numbers. Positive or negative whole numbers 0. 7 is an integer. Negative 7 is an integer. Negative a million is an integer. Positive a million is an integer. 0 is an integer. So, what is the smallest integer that's greater than negative 1? 0. And that's the answer. So again, I don't think the actual technique to solve the inequality is difficult. I think you all can do that. I think the problem is in taking that last step, interpreting exactly what they're looking for. So what you'll see with these kind of questions is it'll come to be a greater than situation, and then it'll say the smallest integer. Or it'll be a less than situation, and it'll say the greatest integer. And then you have to think of what integers fit the description in the answer. Okay? Okay. Any questions? All right. To me, that was the trickiest question on the test. Now, I've told you before how these particular quizzes teach me a lot about you. I thought number 13 would be harder than it was. Most of the people in the class got number 13 right. Connor wants to attend the town carnival. The price of admission is $4.50. Do you pay that $4.50 once, or do you pay it repeatedly? Once. And then the cost of each ride costs an additional 79 cents. Now, is that done once, or is it done repeatedly?
Repeatedly.
All right, so the 79 is the thing that has to be multiplied by the number of rides. So I look through here, and choices 1 and 2 have $4.50 being multiplied by the number of rides. It's got to be the 79 being multiplied by the number of rides. Now, the difference between choices 3 and 4 is whether or not you can do 14 rides or 15 rides. And I actually didn't calculate this out. I looked at the first 4 answer sheets, and they all said choice 3. So I assume that it's right. I would imagine when you calculated it came out to like 14 point something, right? And that means you can't get a 15th ride in. So therefore, the correct choice is 3. And like I said, you guys did a very nice job with that. I remember doing somewhat similar questions in functions. And what I like is that you're recognizing what is the thing that's being repeated, and multiplication is repeated addition. So you know to look for the fact that the 79 is being repeated, and then it's just a matter of working it out. Number 4, I expected everybody to get wrong, except those who got creative. Who got number 4 right? How'd you get it? Plugged in
Like
the
I
numbers.
tried to, for X, I put 2 and then I saw the thing was down to.
I'm not exactly sure what you mean. Who else got it right?
I guess.
Alex?
I solved for X, then plugged in the number for the 4 choices.
Much better way to do this. And I was hoping you would see this. I was dying, hoping you would see this. Anybody else get it a different way? Anybody over here? Yasmin, how'd you get it? Was it a lucky guess?
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else?
Well, I guess. Yeah.
This
What about that?
is a cheat sheet.
I tried. I didn't know how to do it.
Ah, graph this one. Everybody graph this on your calculator.
Graphic.
Graph it.
What are you talking about, brother?
Wait, which one were you writing?
We're graphing the question, x squared plus 6x minus 7. And do that for y1. Okay?
It's a really big one.
Now, don't worry. Now, we're only going to do choice 4 because that's the one that works. Under y2, type in exactly what you see for choice 4.
Is it gonna be the same one?
Yes, it is.
No.
It didn't show up because it's right on top of the other one.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Wait, mine shut up.
Now,
Yeah, if
it's what?
Same. Mine's super duper small.
Yeah.
Did you write x plus 3 squared equals 16 in parentheses?
Oh, it's right.
Yeah.
Equals
Yeah.
16?
Yeah, equals 16.
How do you do that?
zero and equals 6.
It's not possible.
You can't put equal 6.
Where's the equal sign?
Oh, you can't? Okay, if you can't put equals 16, then listen, guys, look here. Look, don't look at your calculator for a second, look at me. Subtract 16 from both sides. So just do x plus 3 squared minus 16 equals 0, or equals y. In other words, solve for the y. Subtract 16 from both sides. And you get x plus 3 squared minus 16 equals 0. And when you do that, the one graph will land directly on top of the other graph. Now, wait, why would your 6th sadistic balding math teacher give you this question? The reason I gave you the question is I want you to understand now. Hold it, look here. I want you to understand that there very well could be questions on your Regents exam that you look at and you go, I have no idea. The truth is there's an algebraic way to do this, and we'll cover it in about 2 weeks. But at this point, you should be saying to yourself, I have no idea. But you should say this, that whichever one of these 4 choices is going to have the same exact graph as the question. Does that make sense? So if you're ever in that situation, use the power of the graph to match the choice to the question, and then you can get it right without having any clue what you're doing.
Is there another way to do it?
Yeah, and that we'll get to in about 2 weeks.
Oh.
Okay?
But what if I don't?
So, no, thank you for even saying those words. But what if I don't? My concern is not this question. You're going to get it right tomorrow or the next day. My concern is your Regents exam, and they put something on that test where you say to yourself, but I don't. I don't understand. Then I want you to say, but I know that when I don't understand, I can crack out my calculator and I can look for the picture to be identical. And when the picture's identical, I know they're equal. So I want you to learn that skill, so if you get lost on your Regents, you can use that as a backup skill. Okay? All right. Now, next, today's lesson.
Favorite part of the day.
What's that?
What?
I need to algebra reconcile. Oh, there we go. And today's lesson 22. I just gave you the answers to the fact exam, which I'm going to put up on the website for next week. In fact, there was homework. always homework. You have a lesson, you have homework. Okay, now, number 1. What does it say to do? Solve for B. As soon as it tells you to solve for B, you do what? When it says solve for B, you do what?
You.
Get B alone or make it say B equals. So, minus the 8A. What kind of 4B is this?
Negative.
Yep, that's a danger situation. Yesterday, I wrote 7C minus 8A. Today, I'm going to write minus 8A plus 7C. It's the same exact thing. There is no difference. God bless. Okay. Divide by -4. Yesterday, I divided the whole thing by -4. Today, I did each piece. B equals 2A minus 7/4 C. If you wrote this, that is equally right. And if you change the order and you wrote 7C minus 8A over -4, that too is equally right. If you change the order of these two, as long as you keep the 7/4 negative and the 2A positive, that is also equally right. Okay? Yes? Oh, that's just a high five? There you go. Long distance high five. Any other questions? Okay, number 2. Factor using the GCF. What does GCF stand for?
Greatest common factor.
Sweet. When we do a greatest common factor, there can be a numerical component and there can be a variable component. So, what's the biggest number they share in common?
3.
Nice. How many x's do they share in common? 1. Now, when choosing the greatest common factor, this is a bit confusing because you see this word greatest and everybody thinks they should choose big. No. Factors are small. Multiples are big. So when it wants the greatest common factor, you're going to choose the smallest exponent they share in common. This has a 2, this has a 1. 1 is the smallest, and that leaves me with x minus 7. And as we emphasized to you yesterday, factoring is anti-distribute. So you always, I cannot emphasize that word enough, always do a quick mental check multiplying back to make sure that you get what you started. 3x times x is 3x squared. 3x times -7 is -21x. I know I have it right. I find it very comforting that I can do that quick mental check and know that I'm doing it correctly. Next up. This time it wants you to write the coordinates of a point not in the solution set of either two inequalities graphed below. Which region do you think is not in the solution set of either inequality?
That one.
That one.
I'm
The one with no shading. This guy up here. So I'm going to go -10, +10, anything up in there. Don't pick this point, even though it isn't in this. Oh no, that's in the solution set on one of them. Don't try to pick anywhere near there. Get up and away from it.
Up and away.
All right. What are the slope and the y-intercept? I got to get y all by itself, make it into y equals mx plus b form. Add 2x to both sides. Die. -4y equals 2x plus 8. Divide by -4. Y equals -1/2 x minus 2. So what's the slope? -1/2. What's the y-intercept? Sweet.
Yay.
Any questions?
No.
Okay. So those questions all together represent a really good idea of some of the skills you should know by now. Now, we spoke of how factoring is to anti-distribute, and yesterday was all about the greatest common factor. We did the work we did in class yesterday. Then we did the homework last night. We went over the answers to the homework. We just did one on the do it. We've done a lot of these greatest common factor factorings, and they're not going to go away. But they're also not the only kind of factoring you know how to do, or need to know how to do. You need also to be able to factor a trinomial. Now let me just go up a little bit. If I tried to look for a common factor here, there is none. See, there's an x in the first term,
Yeah.
and there's an x in the second term,
Yeah.
but there not be an x in the last term.
You can turn the plus sign into an X.
I suppose you could do that, but then you'd also be altering the question, which would mean that it wouldn't be factorable. So the question becomes, I need to come up with a way to factor a trinomial like this. And it's a different way to factor, a different style of factoring. Now, before we begin, let's just do, you know what, I'm even gonna do it for you, because I wanna save time a little bit here. If I do double distribute on this guy, I'm gonna come up with x squared plus 7x plus 12. If I do double distribute on this guy, I'm gonna come up with x squared minus 7x plus 10. And if I do double distribute on the last one, I'm gonna get x squared plus 2x minus 15. Okay? Now, you will get to the point in a couple of days where you can do it just as fast as I did in your head. Because you're gonna notice a pattern. Not at all. The pattern you're going to notice is this. This is a 4, and this is a 3. What does 4 plus 3 add up to?
7.
7. What's 4 times 3?
12.
And we call this AM, add, multiply. The 4, and this only works when the x's are each just one x. If they're not, we have to go to a different approach. 4 and 3, add to 7, multiply to 12. What's negative 5 and negative 2 add up to? Negative 5 and negative 2, what do they add up to?
Yeah.
Negative 7. Negative 5 times negative 2? Positive 10. Again, A, M. Usually I like to write it on top, but I don't have the room. So for now, we'll write it there. This one I'll write on
Are
top.
we allowed to do a box method?
You could do a backwards box, but this gets very quick and very easy, and you'll be very good at it, even before you leave the room today. Now, what's positive 5 and negative 3 add up to? 2. And what is positive 5 times negative 3? Negative 15. So basically, what I should notice by now is that when I do a double distribute or a box method, because it does work out the same either way, I always add to the middle and I multiply to the end. So I look for that pattern going backwards. See, if I was given the x squared plus 7x plus 12 and I wanted to figure out what were my factors, I would say, well, what two numbers multiply out to 12 and add up to 7? So what two numbers multiply out to 12 and add up to 7? 4 and 3. So then it's going to be x plus 4 and x plus 3. And that's the skill we're going to learn today. Now, the first thing I want you to understand is that we're going to do this skill for 3 or 4 days in a row. So I don't expect you to be perfect at it by the time you leave here today. But you should have a small degree of comfort with this. So let's take a look on your paper right now, write AM. Now, you might think we always begin with the middle term, but the problem is there's so many ways to add up to 9 that you could do it, but there's so many ways that it would take a really long time. There's only a handful of ways to multiply out to 20. So let's start with the ways to multiply out to 20. Someone tell me one way to multiply out to 20. Go ahead.
5 times
5
4.
times 4. Someone else tell me another way to multiply out to 20. Oh, and by the way, that also means negative 5 times negative 4. Go ahead. 10 times 2. And that also means negative 10 times negative 2, because in each case, the product is a positive 20, and signs are very important here. There's one other way to make 20. 20 and 1, and negative 20 and negative 1. So now, that's my list of possible multiples. Which one of those combinations adds to 9? 5 and 4. So my factors are x plus 5 times x plus 4. And if you then did the box method to multiply back or double distribute, you would find that x plus 5 times x plus 4 is indeed x squared plus 9x plus 20. Yes?
Does it matter which number you put for?
The commutative property of multiplication says that order is not important. Like 5 times 4 is the same as 4 times 5. So x plus 5 times x plus 4, x plus 4 times x plus 5, all the same. Okay, so you try now. It's the same list because we're still multiplying out to a positive 20. Which one of those pairs adds to 12? Okay, who thinks they know it? Sammy?
10 times 2.
Yeah, but that's not what I would put as the answers. Those are the two numbers I need. I agree with that.
X plus 10 times x plus 2.
Nice. Now, remember how before I said whenever I factor, it's anti-distribute? And what I always want to do is distribute back to check myself? Let me show you, I just told you a minute ago how you could do this very fast in your head. Let's watch how. Ready? Make sure you're looking, because this is a very important skill to have. X times x is x squared. Good. X times 2 is 2x. 10 times x is 10x. What's 2x's plus 10x's? 12x's. Good. 10 times 2 is 20. Excellent. All right. So now you're going to factor n squared minus 7n minus 18, which means since you're multiplying out to a negative 18, don't the signs have to be opposite?
Yeah.
Right? Because a positive times a negative will get me the negative. Go ahead. Figure out the factors for n squared minus 7n minus 18. You're asking yourself, what two numbers? Guys, remember, it's so important to think A, M. What two numbers multiply out, that's why we have the M, to negative 18, and add to negative 7. Think of ways to multiply to 18, and then somehow you got to get 7 out of those two numbers. Bless you.
Don't you have to do negative 18?
Yes, and then you're going to add to negative 7. Francine, what do you think?
You do a negative 9 and a positive 2.
And how would I express that as answers completed?
N minus 9 times n plus 2.
That's good. N minus 9 times n plus 2. But let's say that I'm not sure if that's my answer. Because when you first begin to factor, you will constantly not be sure if that's your answer. Let's multiply back and see, or distribute back. Double distribute. What's n times n? Everybody, n times n? N squared. N times 2? 2n's. Negative 9 times n? Negative 9n. Negative 9n and positive 2n add up to? Negative 7n. And then negative 18. Try the next one. Don't pack up. All right, so tonight we start working more on these. We got like 3 days of this ahead of us, so don't be panicking, just keep on working. Hasta la vista, vaya con Dios, toodaloo, ta-ta. Arrivederci, smile a lot, ciao. Arrivederci, adios amigos y amigas, cheerio. Kadafish, garushurus.